Terrace Marshall freaking opted out. That's probably the smartest move he's made. So sad. I'm so sad.
Yeah. The dude is a beast. Okay, yeah, we'll kick this thing off. All right, hello. Welcome to the ENGAGE8 podcast, episode 4, week 14. We are heading into this week. It is the boy Caleb, joined by our guy Steve. Steve, what's up?
Hello again.
Yes.
How are you?
I'm great, man. How are you?
Not looking at this conference schedule. Not great.
I mean, the only conference that is abysmal right now is the Big 12s. It just in its entirety. Every Big 12 team schedule, it's just terrible. It's atrocious. Nobody looks good.
I'd say the same about the Pac-12, but I digress.
Yeah, we'll cover a couple of Pac-12 teams as we go on because, it's not looking too good there. So as we're heading this week, had some big news break earlier today, Tuesday, December 1st. Is today the first day of December? Yeah, it is.
Yes.
Had some big news break, and we'll go over that a little bit later. First thing that I want to talk about for sure, how we usually kick this off, is our biggest surprises of week 13, previous week. Wooten, what was like your biggest surprise of this past week?
I think it's really JT Daniels' immediate impact in the Georgia offense.
Yeah.
Because we've got a taste of it last week against Mississippi State, and even though that was a very close game, just how he dismantled South Carolina and just was very precise, accurate. The quarterback that Georgia's been needing for a while now, which they had in Justin Fields but weren't able to utilize. But now that JT Daniels is healthy and he can play, he has just turned this offense around and made them actually look competent, competitive, and dangerous for the future. I know that Georgia's essentially out of the running for an SEC title bid, but they could still do some. I want to see some this Georgia team play some good competition. Probably we'll get to see that in a bowl game because this week they have to play Vanderbilt. I'm so sorry, Vanderbilt.
Oh, that's going to be rough.
I want to see this team against pretty good competition. I mean, I don't think we can see that anytime soon until the bowl game. But I feel like JT Daniels is the right direction, the right quarterback to go with in the future. And, yeah, so his immediate impact, his immediate presence that is felt on that offense and the way it just feels rejuvenated and everything is clicking makes this Georgia team scary for next year. And hopefully everybody gets to come back so we can actually see this Georgia team the way it's meant to be seen.
Yeah, I would agree with that because people were really questioning why JT Daniels wasn't even getting like playing time throughout the season. And Stetson Bennett, I mean, he showed in the first couple of weeks that he might be the guy. Like that was kind of the thing, that Stetson Bennett's the guy, the mailman. He's delivering. But as the season progressed, he just started falling apart. And I mean, you had two big transfers coming in JT Daniels and Jamie Newman, and it was like, okay, so which of those two are going to get it? Which one of those two are going to take Georgia that final next step that they haven't been since 2017? And man, my goodness, it was neither of them. And then that showed the collapse that Georgia's been having. Collapse in their terms and what they were supposed to do this season. And then JT Daniels stepped in, and yeah, like you said, he looked like the quarterback Georgia has needed. Not necessarily the one that they may have even like asked for, but when he stepped in and he started delivering, it's like, okay, yeah, this is the guy Georgia needs to carry them out through the rest of the season and to win them ball games. So JT Daniels needs to be the starter remainder of the season. Obviously, he will be unless he gets hurt. I don't see him falling off really for the rest of the season. I got to go with, personally for me, mine was Michigan State. And it's not that I think Michigan State's bad, but I was not expecting them to drop 29 on a very stout Northwestern defense, which 29 doesn't sound like a heavy score. against a Northwestern team, or just in general. But that Northwestern team has looked pretty dang good all season long. They weren't undefeated for no reason. And seeing them kind of struggle a little bit, but hang there with Michigan State, and seeing Sparty pull out the win, that was pretty huge. That completely derailed the Big Ten besides Ohio State. Now it's really just Ohio State pulling away. Northwestern may have a chance. I mean, they played Ohio State, I think, 2 years ago in the Big Ten Championship as a 9-4 team. So I think Northwestern can definitely win out. They may lose once more, but I think when they get to the Big Ten Championship, I think Ohio State still takes it if they go all the way, or if they don't cancel any more games. But Michigan State, to me, that was a big surprise for me to see them hang 29 on this Northwestern defense.
Michigan State's a very weird team this year. I know it's Mel Tucker's first year. He doesn't really have that identity in place yet.
Right.
I mean, Northwestern has never been an offensive powerhouse. They've always relied on their defense. You see the linebackers and the lockdown corners, and they win games 13-7, and they're fine with it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, sometimes Michigan State can catch fire. We kind of saw this in their only other win of the season against Michigan, even though that was not the Michigan we were expecting to show up this season.
Yeah.
But, like, Rocky Lombardi can be a good quarterback at some points, and just for the most part in this game uses his legs to extend drives down into scoring position, either with touchdowns or field goals. And Michigan State kind of Northwestern in a sense, to where they kind of clamp down on Northwestern and said, we'll play a type of football and we'll see if you can do something about it. And Northwestern couldn't.
Yeah.
I wouldn't guarantee anything with Northwestern. We kind of, I want to say they're a papier-mâché team. A few more hits and they could come crumbling down. But I think their game canceled with Minnesota, so I think they have one more game on the schedule, if I'm correct. And I think that's against Illinois. So they're not technically a lock yet. They have to win this game in order to go for sure. But yeah, I don't expect Northwestern to do anything. I mean, I wouldn't expect Wisconsin to do anything if they were still eligible for the Big Ten championship game. It's Ohio State's league, and they're just living in it.
Yeah, at this point, the Big Ten is just who can get within a couple scores of Ohio State in the Big Ten championship. That's what it feels like.
Yeah. Speaking of the Big Ten, my other surprise of the week is a negative surprise because the regression of Taulia Tagovailoa in the Indiana game was kind of startling to me. Because he was doing well. He had a rough start in the season opener, and he found his groove against like Minnesota, Penn State, and the likes. I know that Indiana put pressure on him, made him uncomfortable. I know he was sacked 3 times, but throwing 3 interceptions against this Indiana defense, which is a pretty good ball hawk defense,
right?
But just the it just didn't feel like he was doing as well as we thought, and Mike Locksley is this QB whisperer type of head coach. So it was kind of startling to see Maryland struggle that hard to actually get any type of drive going.
Yeah, I agree because they're such high-powered with Taulia in the game or in the previous games. Like they're it's almost very similarly to how Lane Kiffin's offense operates, how it's sometimes a big risk, big reward, but at a lot of times it's kind of pick here and there, and then boom, big play. And Taulia can run that really well. He showed that obviously in his first start. I mean, just completely dismantling teams in a few weeks, and then you kind of see him drop a little bit in his production, but against this Indiana team, I was really not expecting that in any way. I was expecting him to really put up some big numbers and probably throw 3 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns without throwing any picks. Maybe 1, because Indiana picked off Justin Fields, I think 3 times. So I was expecting Indiana to be able to hold him a little bit, but at the same time, Talia has just looked really, really good when throwing a football. He's on time. He's got great mechanics, got a great release, and been very accurate. So I was really surprised by that too. That kind of threw me for a loop because I was expecting more of a higher scoring game. Both teams kind of in like the higher 30s. But I mean, we saw kind of both teams kind of falter a little bit, and with Michael Penix going down with his injury, that obviously stalled Indiana a little bit at first. But I mean, they dropped 20 in the second half, so Maryland just struggled offensively all game. Indiana looked really good. I think another one for me was East Carolina. A 2-6 East Carolina team going up against a 7-2 SMU, and in the first half, dropped 45. I mean, it was 45-7 at one point in the first half, and East Carolina ended up winning 52-38. SMU had a great second half, and East Carolina kind of faltered a little bit there, but the fact that East Carolina, a 2-6 team, dropped 52 on a 7-2 SMU team with Shane Buechele and this SMU team that has looked pretty good for an American Athletic Conference team in the past 2 years. I mean, that kind of threw me for a loop. I was not expecting to see at one point 45-7 in the first half. I didn't even expect East Carolina to drop like 28, and the fact that they dropped 45 in the first half, that's ridiculous. SMU definitely has a lot of answers, or a lot of answers to a lot of questions that they need to find. And East Carolina, man, I'd like to see them win out. And I mean, I don't know if the whole every team's bowl eligible at the beginning of the season is still there, but that would be pretty cool to see ECU go in somewhere with this offense that they have if they continue that. But seeing ECU dismantle SMU like that was like, what is going on right now?
Yeah, this SMU team, it has to be clicking in order to be effective, because I've seen a lot of drives that stall, but they're a high volume shooter type of school. They're going to keep throwing it deep. They're going to keep trying to get Shane Buechele in the rhythm and to just work it until it finally it comes together. And sometimes they go on lulls. We saw in the Tulsa game that they were up like 28-7 at one point, or 24-7 at one point, and then Tulsa came back in the second half and put up 21 unanswered to win by 4. So this SMU team is liable to have scoring droughts the way this season has looked. ECU is such a conundrum. They can be good some weeks and they can be trash other weeks. It's a very interesting job and just location for recruiting and whatnot. ECU used to be a really good powerhouse team, so I'm hoping that this is a step in the right direction for them, while just being a misstep for SMU, because I always like it when SMU is doing pretty well. So it was a very surprising, just ECU shot out of the cannon from the get-go and didn't stop.
Yeah. It is very surprising. And like you said, for a while they were a really, really solid Group of 5 team. I mean, they were putting together 7, 8 win, 9 win seasons pretty consistently. And I mean, they were a team that nobody really just kind of shrugged off. But seeing them come into the game 2-6 and put up numbers like that, it's just ridiculous, man. That was crazy. Who else you got, Woot?
My other surprise of the week is just Iowa State pulling out a score game. They did great against Texas most day. Matt Camp kept them in line. Purdy and Breece Hall just did their thing, and then they were able to come out and win by 3. So it's good for Iowa State. It's a feel-good moment. We're in the Thanksgiving season. It's a feel-good moment for when Iowa State actually pulls out these games, because they're such a fun place to watch a game. Ames, Iowa is not a very big powerhouse city compared to like Austin and Norman in terms of football. prestige and prowess, and just watching this game and seeing them be able to essentially claim a spot in the Big 12 title game was a surprise, but it was a good surprise. Now, on the other end of that, Texas is such I don't know what to do with Texas.
I don't think anybody does, man.
Tom Herman is clearly not the fit.
No.
I mean, Sam Ehlinger he's a good quarterback, but Texas has had no true identity of what do we do well over the tenure of Tom Herman, because I feel like it's essentially, hey, Sam, make some plays, and that is the Texas offense. And so I don't know who can come in here and take over Texas and make them look like the Texas of the days of yore. I'm not even talking about like Mac Brown days of yore.
Yeah.
I'm just talking about the 70s and 80s, 90s Texas that no one really wanted to mess with and that had Oklahoma's number every year.
Yeah.
And I don't see this Texas team ever hitting those mantles while Tom Herman's in charge. I don't know what Texas needs to do. They've got the boosters. They've got the money. You got to find a coach, and maybe it doesn't need to be a big name. Maybe it just needs to be somebody from within that has shown promise, and that you give them time to develop their schemes, their recruiting trails, and I don't know what to do with Texas.
Yeah, I don't even think Texas knows what to do with Texas. And like you said, Tom Herman, he's definitely not the answer. I mean, even when they had Lil Jordan, it was just all like, Sam, do something. Like, Sam, you got it. Go do it, Sam. And seeing that Herman, yet again, very similarly to Harbaugh, I mean, you come into a program with such rich tradition, such big boosters. I mean, everybody is supporting and pouring into this program. You get great recruiting classes. You got all the facilities and pretty much anything that you want for your football program. They've got it, but it's like you can't deliver. It can't be the players. It can't be the facilities. It can't be anything else. It's got to be the coach. It's got to be the staff. It's got to be the guys who are trying to lead the team. And Herman is not the answer. I agree with you 100% on that. And I've been seeing a lot of people, jokingly on Twitter and Instagram talking about Urban Meyer coming in and him leading Texas. But like you said, I think they need to pick a guy, a smaller up-and-coming guy possibly. Somebody, heck, like Luke Fickell, man. Somebody who's coaching a team that is a group of five even, or just a team that has not had a lot of success that they've flipped around, and bringing a guy with that kind of mentality, not a guy who's used to big programs, who's used to big things like that, some guy who knows how to work with a little bit but get the best out of his players. And I think that's who Texas needs to go for, man. The AD really needs to step in and make the right call here on this. I'm not sure what Texas is going to do following the season, especially with Herman. I'll finish up our surprises with, and this will be a good transition into our MVPs. Oregon State, a 1-2 Oregon State going up against 3-0 Oregon, and it looked like Oregon kind of had them in the first half. It was 24-13 going into the break, and following that it was a 31-19 at the end of the third. And it looked like Oregon was struggling a little bit here defensively, holding Oregon State, and then the Beavers just kicked it into the next gear, man, in the fourth quarter, dropping 22 in the fourth. They had one of the most balanced games I've ever seen. No picks from their quarterback there, and 263 passing yards from Oregon State, 269 rushing yards. 6-yard difference in that. And, of course, 226 of that goes to Jamar Jefferson. But Oregon State really shocked me with this, because Oregon has been picked to be the team in the Pac-12 for the past, 3 seasons. Mario Cristobal's kind of got them in the right track. He's got them all on the right track, for sure. Last year with Herbert, they had a chance. If they didn't lose that second game of the season, they beat Utah, and they got to the Rose Bowl, and they won that. If they didn't take that second L of the season in the regular season last year, they're a playoff team. It was just really shocking to me that Oregon has come in looking really good so far, 3-0, and then Oregon State just steps in and completely destroys that, dropping 41 on Oregon to 38. Close game, but they stormed back in that fourth quarter. And you just got to give a lot of credit to that Oregon State offense to push through and be able to limit Oregon's second half to just 14 while giving up 24 in the first half. So Oregon State, to me, man, that was a big shock. I was not expecting them to put up those kinds of numbers, especially in the run game. But yeah, Oregon State. Pac-12 looks dismantled just like the Big 12. So I don't know, but Oregon State, man, that was a huge surprise for me.
I see it as a good surprise again. I'm happy for Oregon State.
Yeah, definitely.
Corvallis is such a hard place to bring talent and effort and just wanting people and recruits to say, hey, I'd love to go to this little place in Oregon. But I don't think this is as big of a surprise of an Oregon loss. I've watched Oregon some this season, and they've let some of these teams that we're expecting them to throttle and just let them stay in games. UCLA, they only won by 3 against. UCLA has been notoriously bad under Chip Kelly, and Oregon just let them hang. They let them hang. They let Stanford hang, with Stanford missing like 4 field goals and punting in plus territory. So this Oregon team is not as good as people think they are. I think that Oregon State was able to prove that, but I feel like UCLA could have done that. I feel like Stanford could have done that. I don't know if it's because of a quarterback change, whatnot, but I don't know if this Oregon team is truly a legitimate threat to anything. I know they're no longer in playoff conversation talks. But I don't even know if they're truly the kings of the North. Washington may be that this year under Jimmy Lake, but it's hard to tell. But I don't think this is as surprising a loss for Oregon as some people may think.
Yeah, and I would agree with you on that in a sense too. I mean, Oregon has looked pretty solid, but at the same time, they did struggle mightily with UCLA, who has been, like you said, notoriously bad. But I think Mario Cristobal has got them going in the right way. They've looked good the past 2 seasons, but they just need to find that defensive identity that they have not had. And I think with that, they could easily run the pack and possibly clinch a playoff spot if they were to play a full season and win out, obviously. But that was kind of a shocker to me just to see Oregon State put up that big of a fourth quarter, especially when they looked a little stagnant, just getting some field goals in the second and third quarter, not really getting as much offensively done as they needed, even though Jamar Jefferson had a solid game. But still, I think you're right on that. Oregon, maybe not as big a surprise as possible, but Oregon State to me was the big surprise, just putting up that kind of fourth quarter. Going in from that, man, I got to give my first MVP of the week to Jamar Jefferson. He put up some pretty monster stats, 29 carries, 226 yards, 2 touchdowns, busted an 82-yarder out. That's the kind of performance that will win you games like this, especially when you can't get anything going on the scoreboard. He came through clutch. Gabia, the quarterback there, 23 of 37 for 263. Very consistent, and not a lot of incompletions. Consistent, 263 yards, only 1 touchdown. And that's where I think it hurt them the most. He also had a rushing touchdown. But Jamar Jefferson really kind of carried that second half for sure to get them where they needed to be in scoring position and to actually put points on the board. So I got to give a big shout out to Jamar Jefferson. Who you got, Woot?
He may have had great numbers, but the MAC just produces content every week.
It's ridiculous.
Jaret Patterson of Buffalo, New York, the Buffaloes, 36 carries, 409 yards, 11.4 yard average, and 8 touchdowns on the ground could have had 9
Oh
if
my
head coach
goodness.
Lance Leipold was looking at his stat sheet. SID should have been yelling at that man to give him another touchdown to break the NCAA record. I'm so mad about it. He's, 27 minus 9? That's 18 yards off the record set by Samaje Perine against Kansas back in like 2017. This man put on the freshman difficulty on NCAA, turned fatigue and injuries off, and just went to town on Kent State. Jaret Patterson, congrats to you, man. I'm so sorry that you came in second place. You should have had more yards, but that's just a ridiculous performance. The whole squad was a ridiculous performance, having like 10 touchdowns on the ground. You don't even need a passing game.
No.
And it was just a foot race till the end, and Buffalo came out on top. Congrats to them and the Bulls. So,
God, yeah, that stat line's insane, man. The 8 touchdowns is what kills me. Like when Perine and Melvin Gordon had their 400-yard games in 2017, 2016, whenever that was. They had like 4 or 5 touchdowns, which is like, that's ridiculous. That's just ridiculous. The yardage is crazy. That's unheard of. And then the touchdown, that's just insane. But to put up 8 touchdowns, 8, that's the part that's like, are you kidding me? And the fact that they didn't give him the 9th, man. The fact that the Buffalo coaching staff was like, nah, we'll pull him. Don't let him get 9. That's ridiculous. Oh, that makes me mad too, man. Gosh, he should have gotten it. He deserved it.
Northwestern would kill for 8 touchdowns over the course of like 3 games.
I was about to say, yeah, they I think they have 8 touchdowns a season, and the rest is just them scoring on field goals. I think that's how Northwestern works.
Probably.
I'm gonna give another MVP to the second half Washington Huskies team. They going up against a Utah squad coming off a big season. Utah has not looked as good as people probably thought they were. Kyle Whittingham has got to readjust, definitely. He's a fantastic coach, a brilliant coach. But they were up 21-0 at half. Washington did not at any point look like they were going to do anything. I mean, Utah just kept them just in check the entire game. In the second half, man, they dropped 17 in the third and then 7 in the fourth to pull out the win, 24-21. That's the adjustments that you got to make. And I think that's a big testament to Washington at just their new identity with the new coach, and really just trying to keep what Chris Peterson brought to them, just consistent winning, looking good on the field, and being the adjustments is what is huge for me for the second half. Because a lot of times you can just try and keep the momentum and do what you did from the first half if it's successful, or if it's unsuccessful, trying to change it and still not getting results. Making adjustments is, I think, one of the biggest factors of being a good coach in football. And the adjustments made by the Washington team, they were exactly what they needed to do. Hanging 24 in the second half and keeping Utah completely scoreless. So I got to give a big shout out to Washington on that one.
We mentioned, Washington. It's an interesting team under Jimmy Lake. They've lost that edge that Chris Peterson brought to the team. This is a more, I guess you would say, fun and just let's let loose type of ball squad, and I'm fine with that. Washington's a fun team. We've mentioned this team earlier, but I've got to give an MVP just to Michigan State for pulling off the upset against Northwestern, playing their type of football and winning at it. Rocky Lombardi, again, just not doing too much, not trying to take over the ball game, just using his legs, using the run game to set the tone, take time off the clock. So shout out to Michigan State. I don't know how many more wins you'll get this season, but it's a good start to the Mel Tucker era when both of your wins are coming against top-ranked opponents in Michigan and Northwestern at the time.
Yeah. I think Mel Tucker's gonna. I think he's gonna do pretty good with Michigan State. I'm gonna give him about. I'll give him this season, next season, and then the 2022 season to see what he really does with Michigan State. I think you really need. I think for a new head coach, you got to give him at least 3 seasons to try and build the new culture, get the whole team bought in, and then get a couple recruiting classes in and see where you go from there. I think Mel Tucker's going to do all right. I'm not going to sit here and predict that he's going to take this team to Big Ten championship or finish ranked in the top 10. 2 loss, 1 loss seasons within these 3 years. But I can easily see him next year if there's a full season, if things go back to somewhat normal. I don't know if I could see him pulling a 6-6 team together, and then maybe in his 3rd season going 8-4, possibly. But I don't know. I like what Mel Tucker's doing. Michigan State, I agree with you on that. That was a really big game for them to win, especially against such a dominantly defensively focused Northwestern team. And keeping it in the Big Ten here, I would like to transition over to, we'll go Big 12 as well, but I would like to transition here into a couple of hot-seated coaches that I have no idea what to do with either of them, and we talked about one earlier, but I want to know what your thoughts are on the whole Harbaugh situation in Michigan right now, coming off a brutal, not even by the scoreboard, but just demoralizing in terms of who it was, a brutal loss to Penn State, 0-5. Michigan falls to 2-4. What do you think is going wrong with Harbaugh? Like, what do you think is happening this season that's causing a 2-4 record to show up when you see Michigan Wolverines?
I mean, his recruiting has been lacking over the course of his tenure. He came in with Brady Hoke's players, and Brady Hoke was actually able to recruit some good talent, and Harbaugh was able to utilize them to a point. Now that we've fully cycled out of previous head coaching tenure, it's just Harbaugh's players and how player development works in the Big Ten. And I don't think he is suited for this type of job. I know everybody loves when you pick an alumnus to lead the alma mater. Yeah, he loves it here. He wants to be here. He wants to win here. But tell me where that works most of the time. I don't think that – I know they tried to patch the holes in the boat, but this is just a sinking ship. I'm pretty sure they're begging NFL teams to come take Harbaugh back to the NFL again, but I don't know what to do with Harbaugh. You can't extend him. You can't really give him a stopgap year. Michigan's put themselves in a hard place, and Harbaugh is clearly not the answer. Maybe promote from within his staff, possibly, but it's not good. I hate it for him, but he's not the fit for Michigan, and the Ohio State gap keeps getting larger and larger, and I know Michigan boosters will not want that to keep occurring because that's essentially your Iron Bowl. If you can beat Ohio State, you can stay at that job as long as possible, as long as you're beating Ohio State. And Jim Harbaugh has not done that. He's not beaten rivals. He's not beaten ranked competition. His track record is muddy, and I don't know if something broke in him and that team when the spot was short by their eyes in that 2016 slugfest with Ohio State and JT Barrett, but I don't see him staying at Michigan longer than this year and probably next. And when his contract expires, they're not going to renew it.
Yeah, I don't see Michigan renewing it. I mean, they've been begging for answers to a struggling program for the past decade. They haven't had anything happening for them positively. I mean, they've had high rankings, and like you said, that 2016 game against Ohio State, I mean, at one point in that season, they were ranked, I think, 3rd in the nation. that they were like in the top 10 the entire season, and then they took a weird loss to somebody midway through, and it was like, what's happening? Climbed their way back up, and then lost to Ohio State, and then lost in their bowl game to finish with 3 losses at 10-3. And for Harbaugh, and I mentioned this last week, that Harbaugh has not had a season where he's finished with less than 3 losses. He's not had a season better than 10-3. He 0-5 against Ohio State. He's about to be 0-6, no doubt. I think he's 3-3 against Michigan State, and against top 25 teams, he has a tremendously horrible losing record. It's crazy to me that a guy like Harbaugh, who built a Stanford program, who had come off like a 1-11 season, and then within 3 years had them winning 8 games, or 8, 9, or 10. I forgot what it was before Andrew Luck really stepped up. And then with Andrew Luck, they go 12-1. He's going to San Fran. And then David Shaw takes over, and David Shaw has I think he's one of the few alumni next to Kirby Smart who are doing good at their alma mater for a team like that. I mean, Georgia, Kirby Smart, sure, he probably should have a natty under his belt. That 2017 game, they kind of wet the bed against Tua, but Georgia's had some very high success. They've been to multiple SEC championship games. They made the playoffs, made the natty. They lost on a last-second Hail Mary, not last-second, an overtime Hail Mary, and Kirby Smart's fine there. David Shaw, he's been doing great at Stanford. I mean, sure, he's had about 3 or 4 seasons where it's like, okay, what the heck, man? But for the past decade, I mean, they've had more than not. I think they've had 6 winning seasons, and 3 of them were 12-win seasons. So David Shaw has been doing fine as his alma mater, but it's with Harbaugh that confuses me the most. A guy who flipped a Stanford team completely within 4 years, went from 1-11 to 12-1, and then went to the NFL, 3 straight NFC championship games, including a Super Bowl appearance, which barely lost. I mean, it was close. And the next thing you know, he's at Michigan because the San Fran front office was not capable of anything at the time. And at Michigan, it's like, what happened, man? Like, how did he fall off so hard? You can tell that all he cares about is coaching football, but he can't get it. He can't get it done at Michigan. And I think personally it's just because he's in the wrong conference. I think he's more successful in the NFL than he would be in college, no doubt. I mean, look what he did with San Francisco. But I think, like I said, I don't think he can succeed when you have 3 or 4 teams that can win a division and at any given point of the year. You can have a year where Iowa has 11 wins, 10 or 11 wins. You can have a year where Penn State has 10 or 11 wins. You can have that kind of a year where Michigan State pulls a rant like in 2015 where they just go off and go 12-1 and win the Big Ten. You have that. But in the Pac-12, when he was with Stanford, you only had to worry about Oregon around that time. Oregon was the only team that was doing anything. So I think for Harbaugh, I think he just needs to completely reset. I think he can still be a great head coach, but Michigan and the Big Ten is not where he needs to be because he cannot do it, man. I agree with you that they can't. They can't, they shouldn't, and I think they won't extend Harbaugh at all because that's just detrimental to the program. If you're trying to win now, you're not going to get it with Harbaugh. Now, what do you think about this? Because this broke earlier today. Bob Stoops returning to the Oklahoma sidelines to help Lincoln Riley. What is he doing? Like, what do you think he's doing for Oklahoma?
I'm not sure, but if he's taking on like an analyst role, like Nick Saban takes in all of these former head coaches and rehabilitates them, I don't think he's doing that for Lincoln. I feel like maybe Lincoln asked him to help him out with like maybe quarterback development, but I don't know. I don't know how big this is. It's brand new. Bob Stoops he can walk around city of Norman and no one, not law enforcement, not government leadership would mess with Bob Stoops. He is untouchable in the state of Oklahoma because he brought them a national championship. He brought them so many Big 12 championships. He's set there.
Yeah.
So I don't know if he did this of his own accord. I doubt that because, granted, he basically retired and gave Lincoln Riley this job. So I don't know if he still feels like he runs the place in a sense, but maybe he's helping out Lincoln with some offensive developments and just making Spencer Rattler a more consistent quarterback, even though he's pretty talented himself. And Lincoln Riley's had the QB trilogy of just, hey, this is some really good talent, because he's had Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, and Jalen Hurts in back-to-back years. And maybe Spencer Rattler is a little more rougher around the edges than what Lincoln is used to. Maybe he called in Bob to see how he worked with the likes of like Jason White and Sam Bradford and whatnot. Yeah. I don't know how big this is. I don't think it's too big. If Bob Stoops wants to get us back into coaching, good for him. But I don't know what he's doing.
Yeah, I did see. I read part of the article and saw that I think a lot of Oklahoma coaches had either tested positive for COVID or taken precautions. And so they were kind of short-staffed, and I think he just asked Bob Stoops to step in for something. It wasn't specific on what role he was playing. So I would assume sort of an analytical role, like you said. I think that would just be probably the smartest thing Bob Stoops could do for them, just kind of giving them what he sees and how to correct it. But I found that pretty interesting that he called out Bob, or that maybe Bob Stoops asked to fill in because he saw what was happening. If Bob Stoops returned, man, I would love to see him come back to the Big 12. I think that would be hilarious if he took the Texas job. If Herman got fired and Urban Meyer didn't want Texas, they were like, "What about Bob?" And sure enough, he stepped in and actually did something. That would be the dream, honestly, to see Bob Stoops in Oregon. That would never happen though, but. I don't know. I think Oklahoma definitely needs some answers. They had a big win against Oklahoma State, and they're 6-2. Only got 2 losses right now, maybe 7-2. Maybe I got the record wrong, but I think Oklahoma still needs some answers. They have not looked like the Oklahoma team that there has been in the past 3 years. With 3 straight playoff appearances. So I think they need some answers, and if there's anybody that could give them answers, it'd be Bob Stoops. But I digress. All right, as we head into Week 14, we're winding down the season. We're coming to a close here. We're a couple weeks away from championship week. Wu-Tang Clan, man. What are some of the matchups that you are looking forward to the most in Week 14?
I'm looking at the small scale, the group of 5 mainly this upcoming week, because most of the Power 5 schools, it feels like SoCon weekend, even though everybody's in conference play. But a lot of these strong ranked teams are playing the bottom feeders. So we're going to the Fun Belt first.
Oh, yes, please.
I want to see this Louisiana Lafayette and App State game. App State is behind Coastal. Coastal should win out in the Sun Belt and represent the East. But Louisiana's still in that West contention. I don't expect them to get removed from that, but this is just going to be a good game. The Coastal App State game delivered. I know this game will deliver too.
Yeah, I'm pretty hyped to see that, just because Lafayette, didn't they drop 70 this past week?
They put 70 on their poor Louisiana Monroe rival.
Oh
70 to 20. It wasn't good.
So yes, that will definitely be 70 to 20. My goodness. Yeah, that'll definitely be a big matchup. App State, I think they have to win this game, and if Lafayette pulls it out, I mean they're 8-1. The Cajuns are 8-1. And last I checked in the playoff rankings, man, they're there. They are there. So it'll be really interesting for that matchup for sure. I agree with you on that. I'm going to be keeping my eye out on that. 25th in the playoff rankings, yeah. I got to tell you, man, for me, I'm going to keep it small scale too right here. I'm going Coastal Carolina and Liberty. both these schools have been really surprising everybody this year. Hugh Freeze has got Liberty looking real sharp. I mean, they took an L, but they're one-loss team. They still are really good for where they are and who they're playing. And sure, they're playing their own conference and everything like that. But at the same time, it's a solid team. They're nothing to sneeze at. And same thing is said about Coastal Carolina, the 18th in the playoff rankings. So seeing this Liberty team coming here with a high-powered offense, ready to go against a stout Coastal Carolina team, that may be my Group of 5 matchup that I will not be turning off. Like, I'm just gonna watch that game maybe all the way through and then catch updates from other games. But that's a game that I'm beyond excited for.
I'm going to go to one of our teams that we talked about today, Iowa State, West Virginia. Iowa State essentially has clinched their spot in the Big 12 title game, not necessarily, but taking care of West Virginia, who can be scrappy, who can be mean. Neil Brown's done a good job of shaping them up into a different type of beast than Dana Holgerson's score fast, score a lot mentality. This is a very defensive-minded, we're gonna rough it out type of coal miner mentality for the West Virginia Mountaineers, and I feel like this will be a good game. Iowa State, Brock Purdy, Breece Hall, Matt Campbell. I'm just listing off people, but I feel like Iowa State it'll be a good test for Iowa State and West Virginia. And if Iowa State's very dark horse odds for the playoff, they have to keep them alive they have to keep winning, and probably ultimately play Oklahoma again in the rematch in the Big 12 title game. So I'm excited for that one. I hope Iowa State pulls it out. We'll see.
Yeah. It'll be really interesting to see what Breece Hall does to a West Virginia team like that. I'm a big Breece Hall guy. I think he should be in the Heisman contention. He's been putting up statistically top 5 numbers in almost every rushing category this season. So he definitely deserves all the praise that he's been getting. I'm going to throw it to the SEC. This is a weird matchup just because of the two teams that are playing. But for some reason, this one's just been getting to me. Texas A&M against Auburn. And the only reason is just because, yes, A&M is ranked 5th for some reason in the playoff rankings. And Auburn, sure, they came off a loss against Bama. They're 7-3. Or not 7, yeah, 7-3. And maybe 6-3, sorry. And they have not looked like real good. Auburn has not looked pretty good all season. I mean, they technically have 2 other losses, depending on who you ask, about the Arkansas game and the Ole Miss game. But for some odd reason, I just feel like Auburn is going to come out firing against A&M. And A&M looked all right against LSU. They didn't look great. They looked all right. It was 20-7 was the final score. That's not good. It's all right. It's decent. So this A&M team going up against Auburn, I feel like they might hit another slump. And for some reason, I feel like Gus Malzahn might have a field day offensively. I still think A&M is going to win, and I think they'll pull away in the 4th, probably have back-to-back scoring possessions, keeping Auburn at bay and win by, maybe 3 touchdowns. But I would like to see how Auburn responds. They've definitely hit a few slumps. Not a few. They've hit a bunch of speed bumps this season. But there is a possible chance that Auburn can hang and eventually pull out a dub against A&M if they play their cards right. When they click and they look good. But when they don't click, they're one of the worst teams in the SEC, and that's how it is. So against this A&M team, it's going to be a 50-50 chance that Auburn either clicks or they swing and miss entirely. But for some odd reason, I'm excited to kind of watch A&M and Auburn.
Yeah, I feel like Auburn usually has one game a season where they mess somebody else's hopes and dreams up. They haven't really done that this year. This is their last opportunity to beat Chaos Auburn. Kellen Mond is still on the is he good or is he great track, and it didn't look. He's all right last week against LSU. If he keeps that up with his Auburn defense, which can be pesky with Smoke Monday and the like, I feel like Auburn can give A&M fits and potentially remove any chance of a college playoff run. So, yeah, that's something to keep an eye out for. I'm going out west because Fresno State, Nevada,
yes, sir,
is a good Mountain West competition. Nevada had that one strange loss against Hawaii. I guess they were on Hawaii time, so I'll say that the power of the islands mess with Nevada's perfect season. But this is in contention for staying in that Mountain West race. San Jose State and Boise State are out in front with 4-0 in conference play, but these guys are right behind them. And I know Fresno State hasn't gotten to play as many games due to COVID concerns and problems, but I feel like Fresno State and Nevada will be a good game to watch when maybe other games are in a lull or blowouts or whatnot.
Yeah, and that's the thing about Nevada, whatever. The Wolfpack, they're having a great season, and for Fresno State to come in to this game and pull off that win would be, I mean, honestly, it would be completely demoralizing for this Nevada team, just because this is the first time, I believe, since when Kaepernick was at Nevada that they've had a record this good. And so, both of these guys are one-loss teams, and I think Nevada, their loss was Hawaii this past week. Yeah, I'm expecting a high-scoring game. I mean, Nevada's put up 30 for the first 3 games of the season, and then they dropped into the 20s. But I'm feeling that Fresno State kind of falters a little bit on defense, but answers everything Nevada does, and vice versa. Anything Fresno State does, I think Nevada answers. So I agree with you on that. That's going to be a really interesting matchup way out there in the Mountain West. Just to see, how do you respond after coming off a loss to Hawaii, who made a great comeback in the second half against Nevada to pull out the win. And a Fresno State team that I think could, and I think they will, win out the rest of their season, just based on the momentum that they have right now. The first loss was Hawaii, man. Hawaii is just, they're killing they're just killing the top guys. Back-to-back canceled games, but they won the previous 3 before they got those games canceled by a hefty amount. I mean, they were not, barely getting by. They were putting up great offensive numbers, keeping the other team below 30 points in each of the matchups. So if Fresno State can keep Nevada under 30, like Nevada has been the past 3 games, then I think Fresno State will take it. And I think Fresno State will obviously beat New Mexico, put New Mexico at 0-6, 0-7. So I think it'll be just really interesting to see that matchup and how it plays out based on both these teams and where they stand currently. Coming off a loss and then coming off 2 canceled games. And it'll just be a really interesting matchup, man. And I think the piece de resistance this week, almost because one of the guys got hurt, is Indiana, Wisconsin. Really devastating news from Michael Penix Jr., ACL tear out for the season. Their backup stepped in last week and against Maryland, and he went 5 for 5. Had some pretty good throws, and I think coming into this game, he'll be prepared. I think he'll be prepared to play, but I don't know how well he'll be prepared to play against Wisconsin. I think he'll be ready. I think he'll make some good throws. I'm forgetting his name. I think it's Jake Tuttle or Jay Tuttle. I think he'll play well, but against this Wisconsin team, man, they're hungry coming off of a loss to Northwestern. They are ready to flip everything around and go all in. So seeing Indiana, how they respond to Michael Penix Jr., who has been balling out this season, very efficient, just to see what he does. To Tuttle, to see how he responds and leads this offense against an Indiana or a Wisconsin defense that's, it's Wisconsin defense. What are you going to do? And vice versa. How does Wisconsin with Graham Mertz, how do they counter this Indiana defense that's been picking people off left and right? One of the best secondaries in the Big Ten and in the league entirely. I think that's just going to be the matchup of the weekend.
Yeah, and Indiana still has a shot at the Big Ten title game just because Ohio State's been having COVID problems. I believe if one more game gets canceled, either between Michigan State this upcoming Saturday or the Michigan game next week, they'll be ineligible for the Big Ten title game. So we could potentially be seeing an Indiana Northwestern title game, which is obviously going to be way more competitive than Ohio State playing in that. Ohio State can still make the college football playoff, which doesn't make sense, but who cares? But we have the potential for an Indiana Northwestern title game. I'm hoping for that, even though that means COVID is doing work, and
True.
So it messes with you. But I don't know. It would be nice to see two relatively middle of the pack, lower tier teams making their, I mean, not necessarily their debut, but their appearance in the Big Ten title game for the first time in forever, and probably the last time in a while. So.
Yeah, I think this week is going to have some very even when you don't have big matchups like a Notre Dame Clemson or something like that. Like a Florida Georgia line. You still get some games where it's like, whoa, what the heck just happened? What in the world is going on? And so I think this week is going to be another one of those weeks where just some craziness happens. There's going to be something that's like, there's always, every week, there's going to be a game that makes you think, okay, how did that happen? How did they pull that off? And yeah, man, I'm excited for week 14. Anything else to add that looking forward to next week? Or, anything else, Woot?
Just a quick one. Ball State, Central Michigan. Got to get a little MAC in.
Yes.
2-3-1 teams. Ball State's been playing pretty good in comparison to their previous experience in the MAC. This is a bright spot of a season. Jim McElwain still has a good contender in Central Michigan. Had a great comeback win against Eastern Michigan last week with an interception off of one of the defenders' own helmets. So that was very interesting at the factory up in, I don't even remember I can't even pronounce the name of where Eastern Michigan is. Oh, yeah. But, yeah, Ball State, Central Michigan, there's your taste of action. Maybe somebody runs for 500 yards this week. Who knows?
And 9 touchdowns.
That's the only other game that I will divert my attention to and look at the box score some.
Yeah, and who doesn't love Maction, man? Midweek Maction, whether it's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, it doesn't matter what day it is, dude. It's Maction. Everyone loves Maction because you never know what's going to happen, and something cool will happen. I'm excited. That's going to be a great game too. I love everything about the MAC. I don't care how bad they look, how good they look. I don't care. The Maction is the MAC, so that's what matters. But with that, man, I think we'll wrap up Week 14, Episode 4 of the ENGAGE8 podcast. It's been a pretty good season so far, dealing with what we've been dealing with. A lot of postponements, a lot of cancellations, a lot of coaches going crazy, underproducing, but it's been a pretty interesting season, I would say. But yeah, I think that'll wrap up everything. Caleb signing out, and Woot.
Goodbye.
We will see y'all next week.